his head down at a 60 or 70 degree angle, so a very uncomfortable spot, and rescuers very worried tonight.
So leading up into 2009, there was this place you could go to known as the Nutty Putty Caves, located just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. Its daring twists and turns have become quite popular with spelunkers on an international scale. But there was one passage in particular that continuously brought in cavers from all over the world. That being the infamous birth canal, a series of tight winding corkscrews. I mean, one minute you're going up, the next you're headed straight down and to the left until eventually there is this opening at the very end, and only then will you be able to turn around and head back out. Well, on November 24th of that same year, the then 26-year-old John, along with his brother Josh and a few friends, decided to give it a go. Now, while they had in fact been to this cave several times in the past, it had always been one of those things that just sort of sat in the back of their heads, kind of like a one day we will do this type of thing. Nevertheless, with John leading the group, they begin to make their way through an area known as the Big Slide. Essentially, this is a passage that leads to a much tighter area that then splits off into two directions. And ultimately, the decision they were about to make would have some extremely dire consequences. Just a short while later, John comes up to an extremely tight drop, and well, thinking this was the last push towards that opening, he proceeded to wiggle his way further and further down. All the while, the walls are closing in all around him. And eventually, John has become completely pinned upside down in a completely unmapped area of this cave. It was in this very moment his brother Josh realized just how bad the situation was. With little to no way of gaining any leverage capable of pulling him up, the group made the decision to head back up and notify emergency services. Well, before too long, more than 200 search and rescue personnel have showed up and began the process of attempting to free John from this extremely tight space. What's worse is, upon further inspection, they notify John that it is very likely they will have to break his legs in order to get him out. With that in mind, they begin the process of drilling anchors into the wall of the cave in order to create a pulley system capable of lifting John. And at one point, there was a lot of hope as John begins to rise up while they're cranking on that system.
After they had gotten him to the point where he was at least a little bit more comfortable, they ended up having to stop and regroup altogether. Reason being that John had already been up for way more than 24 hours. He was growing more weak and tired by the minute, and the only way they were going to be able to make that final angle, they would have had to completely destroy his legs. It was around this time they were finally able to get John some water and a little bit of food.
However, this moment was short-lived as the anchors began shearing away from the wall, sending John careening straight back down even further into the cave than he already was.
There's an incredible sense of disappointment and discouragement about that having happened, because they know that it was hard to get him to that point, and getting him back to that point again would be a real effort again.
And while they continued their efforts to rescue him, there was just simply nothing more they could do. By the end of the ordeal, John had been suspended upside down for more than 24 hours. And unfortunately, 27 hours into the rescue, John's heart finally gave out due to the fact he had been wedged in that position for so long. In addition to this, John's body was never able to be retrieved, and the cave has since been sealed with John still inside.